So yeah, most efficient, cost-effective solutions. Be a good steward of the electrical panel. We talk a lot about that in a lot of our trainings. And then train and influence other contractors to do the same. We do have a comprehensive training program that we do through Tech Clean California. Look for the class coming to you soon. We're entering into our training season, and that really helps if you're in the business to get your business going. And we also love to help customers and homeowners, even in areas that we don't work, find their proper contractors for them, for their projects. All right. So the agenda today, we saw part of it already over the overview of the Electrify My Home webinar series. We'll go into that in a second. The background for today's training is what is leading to electrification in California, why it's a good time to go all electric now, ways to avoid costly mistakes, and we've seen a lot of those out there, a lot of them. And then we're going to throw in some DIY stuff for those guys that like to get their hands dirty and do some of the stuff themselves. And then we'll discuss some of the opportunities for rebates and incentives here. This is part one of V 2.0. So this is our second webinar series with PG&E. We're glad to be back. And if you look forward to some of the ones coming up, the staging home electrification projects is going to be a good follow-up to this class. We'll get a little bit more detail going. Great one coming up in November for electrical panel assessments. Then December, operating a heat pump, best products to minimize callbacks. Really going to talk about customer conversations a lot on that one. And then in December, around the 15th, right before the holidays, we're going to be doing a zoning webinar that will talk about several different ways that you can do individual zone control with heat pumps, probably some that you haven't seen before. So electrify efficiently. This is kind of our moniker. If you kind of troll around the internet a little bit, you see this electrify everything everywhere. And our opinion is, my opinion, I'm kind of opinionated, and is if we electrify our homes efficiently and we do a good, efficient job and make the right choices, we're going to make a great big impact on grid reliability and energy savings and all these things we don't need to worry about out there if we do this right. Talk about HVAC and water heating heat pumps, overcoming electrification barriers, approaches that optimize comfort, efficiency, and resilience, and almost always guarantee lowest operational cost. And all audience will benefit, especially contractors and industry professionals. These first two, really good for homeowners as well. So a little background here. Where are we going with electrification in California? And you know, the older guys the older folks in the audience today probably remember some of the things that we went through early on. Now, 1956, this was even early for me. I would not have had reference to this, but my parents certainly would have, and so would my older brothers. But we've already been through this in the United States. In 1956, we really wanted to move things towards electric. It was a point in time where we understood that gas was a good solution for heating your house, but it was also leading to some problems. And there was a great big push for it back then. If you see any of these medallions on an older home, it's kind of a cool little retro. Real quickly, let's got a little video to share with you here. It's funny the button isn't popping up that was before. That's interesting. Okay. Okay, my button isn't popping up. Let's go here. Here we go. All right. Let's check out this cool little video. This is a blast from the past. Wow, what do we think of that? Pretty interesting, right? Boy, the 60s, wasn't that an innocent time? The hope everybody got to see that correctly there. The it goes really back to a major push in the late 50s, early 60s towards electrification, when we still see a lot of these around the Bay Area now, which is amazing, is fewer than we used to a few years ago, but these big gas furnaces, and people were able to take those out and actually build more living space. So they swapped the Monster for the new modernized flameless electric home heating. And apparently this lady here she loved her electric water heater so much that she like had to draw a Cupid arrow on there.
Larry, can we go reshare the slideshow?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, all better.
All right. Thank you guys. Sorry about that. Apparently putting a video in is a little bit complicated. So the only because I'm not computer super literate. So yeah, lots of these old gravity furnaces around, and took up a lot of space. Taking those babies out and putting in some good electric technology was a great way to go back then. Interesting ad here. Just we kind of look back at when I grew up. We had a couch like this in my house. But back in the day, electricity offers the same thing, and they called it flameless heating and cooling, which was really very interesting way of doing it. We call it decarbonized heating and cooling now, so we're a little bit more technologically savvy and looking at it through a different lens. But heat pumps were really kind of a pushy thing back then. And as a HVAC service technician and working on heat pumps back in the day, I saw a lot of these old 1960s models still in the field back in the day. Electric furnaces, once upon a time, those were okay in California. Basically, the big strip heaters, the toaster elements you would heat your house with. The baseboard heaters apparently were a step up in the right direction back then. And just other things, radiant ceiling heat. This is the one that really caught my eye. Very interesting. And the lady who really loves her electric water heater. But early heat pumps, these are the kind I was working on early on in my career. I've been in the trade for 42 years, and I started working in Northern California where it was really cold, and I despised heat pumps. They were for people that couldn't, they didn't live on the gas grid. You were too far out of town, and they were just problematic. Lots of wiring. They were loud. They didn't work really good when it got cold outside, so they had the big strip heaters and everything on them. But early heat pumps a lot of times they just left you feeling like this young lady looks. But natural gas won the race. Sometime back around 65, 70, we really flattened off with our gas consumption, and industrial stuff was still heading upwards. Electrical was still being used more, but not quite as much as gas. Gas really took over. Then a number of years ago, we had this thing called the fracking boom, and gas was plentiful. There was a lot of it around. We were pulling it out of the ground as as a byproduct of drilling for oil, and so there was a lot of natural gas around. Prices were really cheap, and there was just a ton of it, and with supply and demand, we were able to provide a lot of it very inexpensively. But we see right here in the last few years, really, our natural gas production in the United States has gone down dramatically, which equals, there's obviously geopolitical stuff going on that's causing problems. Last year we had a real cold winter, a lot of droughts around, so we weren't getting a lot of small hydro or big hydro electricity. We needed a lot of gas, drove up the prices pretty high. If any of you guys enjoyed one of those really high gas bills last winter, y'all know what I'm talking about. But why are we going now? What's with the all-electric resurgence now? It's really about health, air quality, and climate change. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But there's lots of studies out there that show that the health problems that can be related to natural gas appliances in the house, we'll show you a little bit more detail on that in a second, are really are really prevalent nowadays, and so we need to be concerned with that. In California, you know, air quality is a big deal for us here, and then climate change is obviously accelerating a lot of things. So there's a lot of reasons why we're doing the electric resurgence now, but it's good timing because we've never had better technology to actually reduce gas use and live better electrically. Like they were talking about that in the 60s when they had clunky units that didn't work well. Now we can do that now with amazing equipment that does wonderful things for our lives and our comfort. This has been going back a long time, all the way to the early 60s. And then in 1968, the CARB boards were formed in California. Then, you know, we passed some laws, the setting emissions targets. And in 2006 was a real biggie, was AB 32 in California, was the Global Warming Solutions Act. That really started the ball rolling on where we are today, which was we needed to get down to 1990 levels of carbon in the air by 2020, and we happened to finish that off pretty early. We got really down to that number by 2018. Made everybody feel like their ambitions were doing well. 10 years later, right before all that's happening, SB 32 says now we need to dive down 40% below 1990 levels by 2030, and this is what's driving electrification right now. We also have gone a little further with carbon neutrality by 2045. And then in 2018, something we were involved with consulting on is SB 1477, Technology and Equipment for Clean Heating. This is the tech initiative. And there are now incentives out there in the marketplace because of this original investment, this original $200 million investment to get clean energy and heat pumps started in California. And it's really been pretty miraculous what's gone on in the last few years, because 2018, by the time this thing was funded and rolled out, we were mid 2021 before tech was actually getting anything rolling. And it's a little later than mid 2023. So in the last couple of years, the proliferation of heat pumps has been really amazing. There are pre-established goals and milestones that are going on. We're right about here. We're coming up here. We need to put more EVs on the market, and we need to get good charging for those EVs for them to be viable. We need to not, just a little personal opinion in here, we need to not have reliable sources for charging our vehicles. Otherwise, people are going to shy away from them, is my opinion. I've heard a little bit of that lately. Doubling energy efficiency savings. We need 50% heat pump sales by 2035. We're already doing pretty well on that. We need to be doing 74% of our energy at zero carbon, 100% light duty trucks and cars by 2035. We'll see if that pans out. But we have a lot of goals here and a lot of ways to get down here. So it's not as scary as we think. We just need to do it properly. To today's date, 77 California cities have adopted building codes. The first one, very famously, was Berkeley with their new construction gas ban, which has since been litigated, and it's in some litigation right now. Interesting part of that, it was the Restaurant Association that took them in. But there's a massive push for this in California in all these cities. So there's a lot of opportunity here. But we're going flames out by 2030. This has already been decided. All over the state, no no furnaces and no water heaters by 2030. In the Bay Area, it's even been accelerated. In the Bay Area, January of next year, we are switching over to this technology called ultra low NOx heating, which are furnaces that basically burn really, really hot. So they burn all of the carbon emissions out of it before it comes out. And what we've heard from contractors in the southern state and Central Valley that have been installing these units for a while is they're very problematic, and they don't have a lot of manufacturer support. The problem with that is their manufacturers are building these very specialized pieces of equipment just for areas of California. So they've got the whole other country to worry about with their normal product, and then they're putting these units out here that they know that there's an end date on them. So that stuff's not been very good. But we got great news. Last year, the California Energy Commission came out and they said, hey, we need to install 6 million heat pumps by 2030. That's just 7 years. We were talking about this stuff way back in 2017 when it was really 13 years. We are now down to 7 years to get this all done. And we only install heat pumps, and we've done about 230 of them this year. We've still got some time left to do a bunch more. But even companies that focus solely on heat pump technology, that 6 million is a big number. So climate change, contrary to popular belief, is not the #1 policy driver for the recently announced gas bans. So this is kind of something that people want to blame things on, especially people that are hearing about, like, I have to get rid of my gas for the first time, are automatically blaming it on the whole climate change conversation. But in California, it's really about health and air quality. We do a lot of great things in California, and one of the things we've done really well is we have 5 of the top 8 dirtiest cities, most polluted cities in America. If we think of some of these, like if we've ever driven through Bakersfield in the middle of the summer, there's certain climate things that go on down there that really lock that carbon in during the summer, and even in the winter. But Fresno, Madera, Visalia, Long Beach. This one surprised me, Grants Pass. The other one that surprised me was Fairbanks, Alaska. But the air is really heavy and cold there, so I imagine that's holding it all in. But we just really have a problem in California. So this is why the resources boards are wanting to a push for electrification, is for pollution mitigation as much as anything else. When you run your gas furnace and your gas water heater, the heat that you're getting out of that is just one of the byproducts of that combustion that's going on there. The other byproducts that are going out the flue pipe, they carry all kinds of heinous stuff, like nitrous oxide or NOx, CO, CO2, VOCs, just some really, really nasty stuff. And it's kind of just spewing into the atmosphere. And then depending on where you are in the state, that stuff doesn't get above the cloud layers, and it just kind of socks in. So this is a big way for us to reduce the pollutants outside. But we need to think about the pollutants that are inside as well. And one of the things that our customers, like, we talk to customers that are serious about electrification, and we still get ones that like don't want to get rid of that gas stove. For obvious reasons, all of this stuff, when you're running your gas stove, all of this is coming inside the house. At least the water heater and the furnace are putting it outside the house. But gas stoves are really bad. And I know that's a controversial statement to make, because recently there's been some political talk about that. And I think that the major opinion that came out of that was like, you're taking away another option that we have. But realistically, this is a health thing. It's gas ranges in your house are really bad for you, especially if you don't have good ventilation in the house. If you go through and you make your house nice and tight and you make it energy efficient and you keep a gas range in there and you don't turn on that vent fan every time you use it, you're really filling your house full of all kinds of pollutants. And what we see is cooking emissions from gas or electric stoves are all over the place. But if you cook one dish on a gas stove, it creates more nitrous oxide than is legal for there to be outside. So the ranges for outside and inside are very different, but we're already polluting our house inside. Cooking a full meal on gas is like 110 to 420 parts per billion. We need to have down here 30 to 60 parts per billion is the outdoor requirement. And the legal limit is 100 parts per billion. But when we cook a meal on our house, we're bringing our indoor air quality to a point where it's worse than the outdoor legal requirement for parts per billion. So this is really bad stuff. I hate to tell people this, because it's, for whatever reason, gas ranges are really like there's some real deep connection with these things. I went through this myself. I put an induction range in my house, and My wife took about 2 years to get to where she likes it better than gas because we couldn't cook our tortillas right on the flame. So whatever the reason we want to keep our gas ranges in our house, we really need to think hard and long about that because they are really, really bad for the environment. In fact, there's studies that have shown that your children are 40 times more or 40% more likely to develop child onset asthma if you have a gas range in the house. So, and the new induction ranges are seriously cool. They work really, really well. So gas appliance pollution in California is responsible for quite a few deaths per year, as well as just $5 billion in impact cost in health every year. And a lot of that is from the asthmatic symptoms that come up, lost work days. And replacing all residential gas appliances in California would prevent 354 premature deaths, almost 600 acute cases of bronchitis, and 304 cases of chronic bronchitis. And if you've ever had a bout of bronchitis, if I had to get rid of a gas stove, not to cough for a month, man, that'd be great. Another thing is electrification is leading to energy savings. We actually see data. There's actual physical data coming out. This chart here refers to a study that was done by simply calling the people that got electrification done in their house and asking them what the impact to their bill was. And it's very small. There's heat pump technologies and installations of electrification can be done very differently. So I think that the vast difference in this cost being higher is oftentimes people that didn't use their systems as much as they use their new systems. They were not properly guided towards the most efficient solution. But if you look at this, 41% of the people with ducted heat pump systems said that their bills were lower. 24% said that they were about the same. And there's 21% of people out there that don't realize what they're paying on their utility bills, which is really interesting to me. And we run into them. Like if you have auto pay on your utility bill, a lot of people don't know that the bills are going up. So ductless systems also had similar numbers, which is great. The way we look at this is like we could say like over 60% of the houses either saved money or didn't change their cost. That's pretty remarkable when we're taking out one thing and putting in electric, because that was kind of the fear going in, was if I change my house electrically, there's going to be all these boogeymen out there and my bills are going to go up, and electric costs go up and gas prices, blah blah blah. So there's all of these things going out there that are in the back of people's minds. And I have those conversations quite often when somebody asks me, what do you do for a living, or what does your company do? And then I explain to them, they go, why would I want to get rid of my gas? And so we go into these conversations like, you won't be able to afford to heat your house soon if you keep with gas. So this recent poll showed a 35% increase in total energy savings across the Pacific gas and electric territory. And that's pretty remarkable, really, because we're switching from gas to electric. Because if we look at this energy savings piece and also all the pollution mitigation piece, we're really doing a great job out there by electrifying homes. Okay. So why should we do this now? You, your neighbors, everybody you talk to, anybody that you can bore for a half an hour at a party, we need to be talking about this stuff. We need to be talking about getting away from the pollution that's involved here, getting that gas situation out of our lives, because it's going to just cost us a fortune in the future. And we should be talking about this at our parties, right? You might be considered the most boring guy at the party, but who knows? So why do we electrify? A lot of people are coming out, like Dan Sperling, a UC Davis professor. He's talking about it's a critical step towards a low carbon future. We need this, obviously, for the reasons we've already talked about. And former FERC, that's the Federal Energy, I wrote it down earlier, the technological shift and societal shift towards cleaner and more sustainable future. A very famous environmental expert is you know, if we reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, we will protect public health and create a more resilient energy system. And there's not just the future of energy. This is Jigar Shah. He's the director of loan programs office at the Department of Energy. A lot of people around here know Jigar because he's kind of from here, and he used to speak at a lot of the events I went to. But this is about a big shift in the way our economies are going to work, and a big shift in how we do things, and it's going to lead to new business models. Our business model is completely unique as far as the type of industry we have to be licensed in. So I can speak to that directly. Like when we're an all electrification business, we don't work on gas. We don't go service people's furnaces. We don't do any of the things the traditional HVAC companies do, but we need to be, as electrification specialists, we need to be licensed as HVAC people and electricians to get our jobs done. So new business models, new products, a lot of cool new stuff coming out. Whenever we have a movement like this, a lot of super smart people get out there and start designing really cool stuff. And then new markets. We're going all over this whole market in California. Whether you're low income, middle income, whatever it is, those markets are presenting themselves. And then we're going to do industrial, commercial. It's really an exciting time. So how will building electrification impact natural gas costs? Well, frankly, it's going to go up, and it's going to go up really far. As we electrify things, our cost of ownership and maintenance of our rapidly declining gas system in California is all supported by how many therms of gas we're selling. And as we sell fewer therms of gas, that cost of ownership of all the maintenance of that gas system is going to be shared among fewer and fewer people, which is going to drive up that cost. There's some models out there that are showing gas prices are going to get extremely high. Like, if I still have gas for heat, will I be able to eat? And that's unfortunately going to be the choice a lot of people are going to have to make if we don't get into this as soon as we can. So electrifying more quickly puts you in a position where you don't have to suffer those high gas prices coming. But we see how things are going is cheaper renewables, electric demand, better heat pumps going into the thing. That's going to make the gas demand fall. More climate policies are coming in. Those fixed costs allocated to fewer customers equal high gas rates. This is just where we're going. Matter of fact, if we look at kind of a couple of scenarios with mixed fuel homes and all electric homes, an all electric home, our costs are going to stay pretty static. Once we establish the efficiency of our electric homes that we're installing systems in, and if we do these jobs efficiently where we're not making a marked increase in their utility costs, we can avoid all of this upswing. Because if we look at what this is going to cost, and gas prices are going to shoot up, and we had a higher than expected gas cost last year because of the factors we were talking about earlier. So these charts that were put together a few years ago, like 2020, are all off now. Like, we're already up here. So really, really high bills for mixed fuel homes, somewhat of a more straight cost for electric homes, but electricity costs are going to go up over time too, but we can help protect ourselves from these high gas costs by moving towards electric and doing it as efficiently as possible. Here's some of the possible transition steps, and this is another one that was presented back in 2019. And we're doing a lot of these things now. We're seeing this, a gas system of expansion avoidance with the 77 cities and targeted retirements of the gas distribution system. There's several of these programs kind of getting started in the state right now. Changes to rate design and cost allocation. So Javier was talking about that. There is a better rate design for electrified homes now than there was a few years ago. So if you're going to electrify your home, you need to let PG&E know you did it, and they will put you in a rate plan that is better for heating your house with electricity in the winter. What we don't want to do is we don't want to wait till this happens, right? We want to get our houses electrified before they start adding all these surcharges and fees on them. We started seeing this a little bit already with permit costs going up, and cities are going to have to recoup their infrastructure costs and all these things as we increase wire sizes to neighborhoods, and they do more feasibility studies to see if people can get electrical panels that they need for whatever reason. Typically, we're electrifying whole houses on 100 amp panels just by making wise choices and directing our homeowners in the most efficient path. Now, Berkeley, how they're really good at putting stuff together and having a plan, right? There's serious planning going on here. So there's everybody probably understands the carrot and the stick, right? The carrot is what you want. The stick is what you're going to get if you don't go after the carrot. And really, that's going on. And I've been in meetings and talks, and I've heard what's going to happen later when the sticks come out, and you want to get this done while carrots are out there. And now the carrot world has never been better. Moving forward into next year with the IRA Title 25 incentives and tax credits and all of these things is going to make it more affordable for people to electrify their buildings. But Berkeley really kind of put it down into this unique little chart that they do. And they're already in phase 2 of this operation. So we've been in meetings recently with Berkeley where they're talking about mandatory electrification requirements. So people are going to have to electrify even in standing houses. They won't, if you have a water heater fail, they're not going to let you put a gas water heater in. So things like that are going to be happening. They're looking at a program, if you sell your house, you have to sell it with 1 heat pump in it. So interesting the way that this is going. This is a really great graph that kind of shows it. But once they already have an end date for completing the transition, and they've got a plan all the way through. Pretty impressive. So another reason why we want to electrify now, especially for those of you out there that don't have air conditioning in your house, heat pumps have built-in air conditioners. Y'all know that. We wouldn't be on the call probably. This is a big deal because California has been getting warmer and warmer and warmer. And this is an interesting study that they did. This is between 1850 and 2020. It's based on a chart that was devised back in the day. And you can see the actual temperatures getting warmer over time. And we are in a point now where the average temperatures are much warmer. In fact, in 2022 on Labor Day, I was camping during this trip, and man, it was hot. That heat wave really caused some problems in the state. In fact, it caused major problems for a lot of people. There was nearly 400 people lost their lives during that heat wave for heat-related reasons, which is something you don't hear very much. But we need to go towards air conditioning. So I started installing heat pumps in the Bay Area back in 2014, 2015 because I couldn't get furnaces small enough for the houses we were doing because we were making the houses tighter. And so we had a big, what year was that? 2016 or 2017, there was a big heat wave down there. Everybody got their first record temperature for a long time. I think they broke that a couple years ago. But I had people calling me, thanking me for talking them into a heat pump because they just would have gotten a gas furnace and they wouldn't have had air conditioning in their house. So if you think that I don't need air conditioning, think about the future. So solar and energy efficient homes sell at a premium. Electrified homes will likely be next. We'd say maybe next, but there's a lot of things going on kind of in the background of that. There will be a time when you sell your home, just like you had to declare that you had lead-based paint or asbestos in the house. You also have to declare that you have gas appliances in the house. So it's naturally going to lead to a demand for electrified homes, especially for those people that are looking for homes that are kind of in that audience now. But there's a real opportunity for increased property value with electrification as we get more clear on what all that means in language. We're really in the very beginnings of this whole electrification movement. So there's big opportunities out there, big opportunities. But if we screw it up, there's also big risk for getting it wrong. Everybody heard all the conversations about the grid doesn't take it. A big one last year was like the state came out and said we're only going to sell electric cars by 2035. Very inconveniently, we had that really bad heat wave like a week later, and they said don't plug in your cars, which really the optics on that weren't too good. And unfortunately, when the optics like that are happening, it really sends conversations through the vernacular and people talking at parties and things like that. And I hear it all the time when I bring up what I do is like, we can't even keep enough power for the cars to charge when it gets hot outside. But the thing is, if we do this right and we put in the right systems and we put in low energy systems, we can actually reduce the overall impact on the grid rather than increase it. So this is kind of the stats, like 90% of the houses out there rely on gas for space or water heating. So there's 11.7 million houses in California. 90% of those have a gas furnace and a gas water heater. 96% of those houses with gas or electric resistance heating. 12 million California homes have gas or electric resistance water heaters, which means not heat pump water heaters. And then 3.4 million houses in California don't have any air conditioning. And these are the ones that are going to really benefit from electrification because they're going to get that added level of safety in their home for the ever increasing kind of temperatures in California. So I'm looking forward to adding 3.4 million new heat pumps to the grid. If they're done correctly and they use less energy than their predecessors or less energy than a traditional heat pump, we can actually reduce the overall grid energy. As a matter of fact, if we did all of these with good, efficient inverters and we took out as many single stage systems and put in really good inverters, we probably wouldn't have, this is purely subjective, we likely wouldn't have the grid impact that we're going to have. So big way to save and big way to make sure that our impact is lighter. Okay. The tide has turned. This year, this is an interesting statistic. My entire career, up to the point where I only started installing heat pumps in 2014, and that was strictly because we were tightening houses up and we couldn't find furnaces that were small enough to actually fit in the houses properly. That doesn't mean a company wouldn't come out and put too big of a furnace in, but we've never done that. So we had to put heat pumps in order to get systems that would fit properly. Now the big challenge is taking somebody off a gas system, putting in a heat pump that has 30% less capacity and not telling the customers what to expect. We see that being a problem now. But first time this year, heat pumps actually outsold gas furnaces, which is amazing. And as we go down this road in 2024 of ultra low NOx furnaces, there still will be a lot of contractors out there that plan on installing those. And those are the same contractors that continuously oversize systems. They don't look at static pressure. They don't look at things like that. And all of these furnaces are going to be going in are more susceptible to problems if people don't install them properly. And people aren't installing furnaces properly now. And there are some guys that don't want to install heat pumps. So we want to be careful when we're choosing contractors as well. So avoiding costly mistakes, go into this a little bit. In 2 weeks, we will have the next webinar. We'll be really focused on this as staging your project properly. But you got to chart a course and plan your budget. If you're a homeowner, you're thinking of getting this done, we need to do the low-hanging fruit things first. Like most everybody that would be on this call, I would assume, has already changed out their lighting. Getting rid of the gas ranges and going with induction technology, that's as easy as just putting a unit on your counter and using that to boil water. I mean, that's a net gain impact, just reducing the exhaust from your gas range that much. But maybe a small one that you get from Amazon or a real one going in, whichever way you want to deal with that. Heat pumps, we need to make sure we're budgeting for heat pumps. And our advice to you is, don't take the cheapest bid and understand what you're getting. Heat pump water heaters, these are a great solution. If you've got a gas water heater in your house now, we have technologies out there that can plug right into the wall now. And I've tested one in my house for a full year. I was a little skeptical about plug-in heat pump water heaters, but mine has been flawless, and I still have teenagers at home, so or a teenager at home. Just feels like two. So heat pump water heaters are a good first solution to get into electrification, and that will kind of start the path for you. But it's important that you plot out your course on this thing and make sure you don't put a heat pump water heater in that's going to use too much current, and then it's going to negatively affect the next thing you need to do. So all this stuff needs to be done as a plan. If you're a homeowner, go through and look at all the gas appliances in your house, list them, and then start looking at new appliances and find out what your energy needs are going to be. And then you want to kind of consult your electrical panel and see what will fit and what you have room for. So it's a little bit of a puzzle to put together. Mostly solar and PV and battery systems. These can be done if you're thinking about getting solar PV and you haven't done it already. My advice would be to electrify, figure out what your true usage is, and then get your solar and battery system to actually give you what you need based on the energy you're actually using. You may find as you electrify your house, you use a lot less energy because your house is more comfortable and some of the things that might be done to the house. So if you call a solar guy out and they tell you, well, I know heat pumps use this much and this much use, and they sell you way too big of a system, that didn't used to be a problem with the old net energy metering plan. But the new net energy metering plan, if you overproduce from what you use, you get nothing for it, and you still pay for on peak and other energy when it's not producing. So it's really, really important to strategize your solar in a different way than you would have before the end of last year. Make sure that you, if you need an electrical panel upgrade, and a lot of houses in the Bay Area need electrical panel upgrades just because the panels are old and kind of jinky and worn out, and kind of like 50 people have worked on them over time. So then, and then look at lower energy solutions as well. Like if you're going to switch your dryer from gas to electric, consider going with a heat pump dryer. As long as you don't have a big family, you're not doing a lot of energy, this is a very low energy efficient way to dry clothes. So if you're one of those people that's really conservative about those sort of things anyway, a heat pump clothes dryer would be great alternative to a regular clothes dryer, and it opens up room in the electrical panels for other loads. So if your gas furnace dies, don't buy a VCR. Your gas furnace is like a VCR at this point, right? We've gotten so far away from the need for one of these things. It's like going and buying another gas furnace is like trying to buy a VCR when your VCR goes bad. It just doesn't make any sense now. So we all like to stream things now. Everything's electronic. We're really high tech now. We need high tech heating solutions, heating and cooling solutions. This particular picture is from a house we did where they had one gigantic furnace, and we put these two very small systems in. So we reduced the capacity of this house by more than half, and we made the house way more comfortable, and we gave them zonal capabilities. So half the house would always be really warm before, and the other half wasn't. And now both sides of the house are really comfortable because they have their own system for each side. Also, if you're going to get into this and electrify with a heat pump and put a new comfort system in, it's extraordinarily important that these things get sized properly. I mentioned that before. When we're taking out a gas furnace and putting in a heat pump, we're really reducing the overall heating capacity sometimes by 2/3. And if we keep a leaky house that we don't know how much air needs to go into each room, that's going to be indicative by having a furnace that heats the house up really quickly, and some rooms get warmer than others. But if we don't know this, we're not going to be able to design the most efficient heat pump system. We need to know how much system your house needs, but also how much air each room needs in order to keep things very even. The new heat pump technology runs longer, and it speeds up and slows down. So it gives you exactly what you need when you need it, and it gets much longer cycles, putting out a fraction of the power and utilizing a fraction of the energy. And when we do that, we need to know more about your house than just throwing a giant furnace in there that's just going to fire hose a bunch of hot air in there. So it is important that if you're going to electrify, especially to the HVAC side, that you find a contractor that will go through this process with you. And it's not just an on-paper load calc or I figure the rules of thumb is like 500 square feet per ton of cooling capacity. That does not work with heat pumps. You have to do a load calc to get best fuel economy and best comfort. Get to know your electrical panel. I bet not a lot of people have ever told you to do that. And I don't recommend that you go in and get to know it so much you start taking wires off and looking at them and say, what size wire is this, and forget where it goes. Or maybe you have like a spaghetti factory like this electrical panel here. If you know your heat pump or your electrical panel looks like that, you need to call a professional. But anyway, getting to know your electrical panel is really important. We need to know the overall capacity of the panel, not just how many spots there are for breakers, but the overall capacity and where your existing loads in the house are laying in with that capacity rating. So you can go count the breakers on your electric panel, and I get the question quite often, I have a 100 amp panel and all my breakers add up to 150 amps. I need a new panel. And that's not the way it works. So you have to have somebody come out that knows how to do an electrical load calculation when it's finally time to figure this out. But we want to avoid unnecessary panel changeouts. And we've also seen out there in the wild some people that got kind of a misdirected heat pump solution installed in their house. They were told that they need an electrical panel upgrade to get that heat pump system installed. They basically upgraded the panel just enough for the heat pump, and they put a heat pump in that just has all this circuitry that is not necessary. So it has the potential to use more energy than it needs to. And so you have to make spaces for that. So that customer had to get a new electrical panel, a second new electrical panel in 2 years, because he wanted to add loads for a stove and a dryer and the heat pump water heater and solar and batteries. So my advice, get the house electrified, do it on the best path possible, the most efficient path possible. Use circuit splitting devices if you need to, but save the panel change out for the battery and solar guy at the end if you're at that position in your quest. The other thing is, when any contractor comes in your house, if you hire a plumber to do your heat pump water heater, that most of the time the plumbers don't do the electrical, so they're going to have an electrician come in. Okay, and you've already talked to a guy about a heat pump for the house. You talk to a guy about electric dryer and another electrician. You're going to get all these hands and all these eyes in your panel. It's much better to do a project with somebody that can handle everything from stem to stern, because there's communication problems pop up during the execution of multiple contractors getting their fingers in here. And we had that pop up just recently. We're doing a heat pump for a house. We needed to run a wire. There was a single conduit going into the attic. And before we got out there to do it, the guy's getting a circuit ran for a stove, and the guy used our spot. So we had to scramble to figure it out. There's little communication there. We could have ran the wire to the stove and it would have been fine, but I think the customer wanted to save 25 bucks or something. So always expect that there's going to be EV chargers. Now, EV chargers might be the thing that push a lot of panels over the edge and require actual bigger capacity, but they don't always. And what will happen with houses that have the wiring coming in from the street, it's going to be super expensive to change that wire out. So we're going to use a lot more circuit splitting devices like simple switches and Neo charge units and things like that. And then install the most efficient appliances. And when we mean this, what we mean by this is, even if it costs a little bit more to buy a heat pump dryer than it does a regular dryer, if you're in a household that could use a heat pump dryer, like it's just two of you, you don't do a ton of laundry. If you use that heat pump dryer and it would work for you, that'd be great. If you have to use an electric dryer, say let's use the electric dryer circuit and split a circuit between that and a heat pump water heater, something like that. So we're using less impact on the panel. And then it's really important to understand your options. So, and I know this is tough for people that are like interviewing contractors, but realistically, there's a lot of contractors out there don't understand electrification yet. They just don't understand it, which is the reason why we do these webinars. Be careful with zoning. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, you're gonna get your new heat pump system, we got this multi-zone unit outside that we can do a bunch of different zones with, That doesn't work in every application. And this one was a hard lesson for me. We put a multi-zone unit in, and I had to go out and replace it with 3 individual zone units, because it just, the multi-zone units do not work as well as multiple individual zones. And I know you might be thinking, oh, I don't want 3 of those things on the side of my house. Well, chances are you might not need 3, might need 2, might need 1. But if you put one of these solutions in, like we did first on this house, is you're going to learn right away that there's a lot of idiosyncrasies with these systems that lead to a lack of comfort. And what we want to do when we're doing heat pumps is we have the opportunity to make the house super, super comfortable, quiet, energy efficient. If we choose the wrong solution, that can go sideways. Here we have 3 systems installed. Here we have 5 systems installed. Now, we found this picture on the internet, and it makes us chuckle. And anytime we take it into one of our training classes, we put it in front of our contractors, it makes them all chuckle. And we try to figure out why this happened. But I mean, ultimately, this is not a bad solution if you got 5 areas that you need to condition. But it doesn't look too good. So this is also something you need to do, is understand what you're buying. Like if you have one of these systems that will do 5 zones by itself, and you can have 5 interior units, it's going to be better than putting 5 exterior units on. But the better way to do that is talk to somebody that understands, and maybe wrap these up into a couple ducted systems or something like that. But just be very, very careful with zoning. We actually have a webinar on this in December that you come back for if you want more information on this. We're going to really drill down on it. So if you are a gifted DIY guy like you know, and we talk about this all the time, nobody seals a house better than a homeowner with an air sealing book, because realistically, you're going to be really motivated to do the best job possible. And not to say that air sealing people from companies won't do it, but realistically, when we have air sealing level guys that are charging you know a fair amount of dollars per hour, and you as a DIY guy can go up and do it yourself, then you might get a great output if you read up on it a little bit and just do the job. But be cautious. If you need surgery, you need to go to a surgeon. We recommend doing the same for big electrification jobs. If you want to convert your house over and you want a ducted heat pump solution and you want to do it, unless you've got a background in this, I would not recommend doing it yourself. There's just too many things that can go wrong before, during, and after you get done with it. And so keep that in mind. And consider how much you value your own time, and in some cases your own safety. And then keep in mind, a lot of times homeowners don't understand what's required for code and enforcement and things like that. And you may put a system in there that works fine, but is not up to code on any level. And then when you go to sell your house, that's all going to come out and it's going to be a big problem, or you're getting something else inspected, and there's just, so just be careful about that stuff. Also, we need to do, this is a good thing that homeowners can do, and which is air sealing. We see a lot of houses like this one in the Bay Area. And if you've ever walked into a craftsman style house where it's got the fireplace and it's got a china cabinet on one side and a bookcase on the other, this is what it looks like from the top. This is the top of the china cabinet. There's always open walls around that. And you can see in this attic space, they had a contractor come out and put insulation in the attic, and they did a fairly good job of installing bat insulation. It's not bad, it's in there pretty cleanly. They went around this pipe here, they didn't go over it. But that contractor understood what he was supposed to do. I am supposed to insulate the ceiling. So when he saw this, did he not realize that all of these are just ceilings laying sideways? So this major opportunity for energy savings and comfort was just missed because the guys doing this didn't understand actual building science. So what do you do with something like this? You just put the foam board over it and you foam in around it. Any houses that were built way back in the 1800s, we got a bunch of those, all the way up into the 90s are going to have this problem if you've got a subfloor. So this is we're looking at the underside of a bathtub here. And when they put the bathtubs in, they cut big giant holes so they could get all the plumbing in. and then they leave these big giant holes. These big giant holes become giant cold air leaks. So these things need to be taken care of. So as a DIY thing, if you see these in your basement or crawl space, it's a good idea to seal them. Put the foam board over them and foam in around them. It's not a permanent thing. If you ever need to fix a leak or something, you can just cut it out with a knife. But having these things sealed will save so much operating cost with your heat pump that that it's worth doing on every house. The other thing is, if we live in a more modern house that has drywall, we want to get up there and we want to seal the places where the wires go through the drywall. We want to seal the top plates over the hallways and the ceiling, because what happens when they build the house, this wood is nice and green, it dries out over time, it creates gaps, and it lets that air get down inside the walls. And then sometimes we have driving forces in our house, whether it be wind outside or maybe the furnace running, or you turn on the fan for the stove, and that causes a negative pressure in the house, and we just start sucking air from dirty places all the way down through the walls. So if you have the ability to do that, get up underneath the bat insulation, seal all that stuff. That's a great DIY thing. And then this is a picture of one of these actually done. Just foam board in there, and then get in there and foam the heck out of it in every angle that you can. Buy an infrared camera. If you're going to go on this quest yourself, spend the first $250 on a cool infrared camera that you can plug right into your phone. These things work great at being able to find the cold spots in the ceiling or the hot spots, finding out where the air is leaking up around the floor so you can go fix it. If you can't see it, you're just guessing. If you're not testing, you're just guessing. But when you can see what the problems are, it's super easy to fix them and get a plan going. And you can also, from the PG&E tool lending library, you can get a much better camera than this lent to you for a short period of time. So you can go through and scan your whole house, figure it all out, and return the camera. Then you borrow it again once you're all done, see how good you did. But make sure you prioritize these places. If there's a major differential in temperature, and right here what you're seeing is a warm room with that's really warm here, and then the transposed color, this is a very cold ceiling here. So if you have a 71-degree room and you have, say, 80 degrees at the ceiling, and then you have a cold spot like this, the second law of thermodynamics means heat is always going to go to cold. So it's going to push itself through that dead spot where there's no insulation. The opposite will happen in the summer when it gets really hot in your attic. This is going to be really red because it's going to be pushing heat through. So these are important things to do, and you don't know that these exist unless you can see them. Self-installed mini splits. So we see a lot of these on a lot of the different websites, and you can get a lot of them on there's like mini split warehouse, and you got all these crazy off brands and all these sizes, and there's some of them out there that are designed to be installed by DIYers, but don't expect too much out of these things. So I have a story of a good friend of mine, and he's a landlord. He owns a bunch of houses, and he's kind of let's just say he's cheap, and so he has a cabin in the woods. We were going to put a double heat pump in his house for him, a nice low temperature heat pump, because it snows up there a lot in the winter. And basically he saw what my system that I recommended looked like. He says, oh, it looks like that, and it has one of these outside. And he bought a Pioneer system for his house without knowing what any of the recommendations were. I was offering him a really good high quality system at my cost plus a installation, and he ended up buying one from Amazon, and he saved probably $500 or $600, right? So he saved $500 or $600 on this system. And he says, I'm ready to put in my system. And I says, okay, I'll get it ordered for you. He says, no, I bought one. And I said, you bought one? He bought one off Amazon. And I said, I'm not putting that in for you, dude. I'm not touching that thing. So he had his handyman that lived across the street install it. And literally the thing worked for 3 months. This was 3 years ago that he did all this. It worked for 3 months, and it sprung a leak, and he couldn't find the leak. And I'm his friend, and I'm a mini split specialist. I told him, I'm not working on this thing. I will not work on it. When you're ready to pull it out and put the right one in, you can come talk to me, but I'm not working on this. And so he's had this system up in the mountains that he did save a few $100s on, got it installed by somebody else. We saved some money, but now it literally doesn't work and hasn't worked for 2.5 years. So watch out on these. Another thing about these things, you don't know what size you need. And if you get the wrong size, it's going to be a problem. And then they're extremely difficult to get parts for. So especially if you get one of these really, really odd brands, like there's the Sinville or some other ones that I've seen. I'm like, I haven't heard of that one before. But trying to find parts for that, or even the manufacturer that actually built it so that you can get parts for it, is really, really tough. And some of the parts are a little cheaper. So I've seen people put these in and then they die 2 years later, and then they just get another one for $700, put another one in and get 2 years out of it. But that's just be careful. These are really cool. There's a lot of single room applications out there. There's the stand-up kind of portable unit, but you have to prop the window open and put the fan out, and then you got to empty the little reservoir in it all the time. So it's not the most convenient unit, but if you need some survival heat or survival cooling, it'll be good. Like when it's super hot and you just want one room to kind of refuge in. But this is a new unit that came out a couple of years ago. This is called a gradient system, and this actually fits over your window. So there's a unit on the outside of the building that's about the same size as this, and you can DIY these things pretty easily. But when you do that, a couple of things you need to think about is, where's the water going to go? When you run this in cooling mode, where does the water go? So you need to make sure that you're making considerations for condensation removal. And then you're also leaving your window open. So if you do this and you unlatch your window and put this down here, your window is no longer going to latch. So you have to have some sort of a secondary security device on these, especially in today's world. And these are going to make more sound, but what the heck? You did it for a fraction of the cost and you're not hot anymore. That's cool. And most of these units are just going to plug right into a 110 volt outlet as well. So there's some cool solutions coming out, and there's going to be more. There's so much innovation going into this stuff right now. It's amazing. Okay. All right. So plug-in induction cooktops. If you're out there renting right now and you have a gas stove, although every place I ever rented had an electric stove, but I'm sure there's rental houses or whatever with gas ranges. If you're concerned about the gases now that are coming out of the gas range, you can easily get one of these double cooktops. And we go into a lot of houses where people have abandoned their gas range, and there'll be like a piece of plywood or a piece of Formica right here, and they've got their new double induction unit sitting right on top of it that they're going to do until they can get the electrical put in and get the full unit. But these things are really inexpensive and they work super good. Like this one's like $90 on Amazon. I think less than that. I think these are under 75 bucks now. I've seen these for about under $200, but great way to do it if you're living in an apartment or small house and you don't want to deal with this. Because if you're in an apartment that's 900 square feet or a small house that's under 1,000 square feet, and you have 4 of these burners going on your gas range, that's a lot of parts per billion of all those nasty compounds that are coming into the house. So very inexpensive solution for that. Other renter opportunities. Avoid gas cooking if you can at all possible, especially if you're living in a small place. A lot of apartments, like 600 square feet, you're running a couple burners on that burner and you're not running the fan. And I've seen a lot of apartments where the fan just recirculates, like the microwave hood or whatever will just suck the air off the top of the thing and stick it right in the top. So that air is going nowhere. You know, keep a window open if you're going to run your gas range, especially the smaller the place that you're in. Limit your hot water use with low flow shower heads. They're probably doing that in most of the apartments already, but you can get low flow shower heads real easy. That'll reduce the amount of energy you're paying for hot water. There's a lot of opportunities for electric cooking with to get away from the gas. Enroll in community solar. If you're in an area where you have MCE, Sonoma Clean Power, East Bay Clean Energy, enroll in those programs so at least you know that your power is coming from clean sources. Line dry your clothes if you have the opportunity. Buy a heat pump plug-in heat pump dryer if you have the means to do that. I would suggest if you live in a brand new apartment building, don't start hanging your laundry right off the back of the thing. You might get a letter from the landlord, but see what you can do, and avoid using the gas fireplace inserts if there's some of those in there. 120 volt water heaters, heat pump water heaters. These are actually, these came out a few years ago. I kind of poo-pooed these when they came out and said these will never work and they're going to be a problem. And so we teach for Tech Clean California. They gave me one for my house. I put a 65-gallon plug-in electric water heater in, and I was at best thinking it would be okay, and I would just pull it out and put a 221 in later. But realistically, that thing has not skipped a beat. One time we had a little lukewarm shower after we did 6 loads of laundry in our 3rd shower, and we learned our lesson then. We learned to not take showers after my son. So it has literally never been a problem. And now that I've gone to electrify everything else in the house, it's been a real godsend because I don't have to allocate that power for that water heater, and I'm able to get more things. So I have a wall mount mini split heat pump in my garage that I wouldn't be able to run if it wasn't for that 110 volt water heater. So these things are good, and they work good, and they are not going to need a lot of energy. So you want to make sure if you're putting these in yourself, that you need to hook up the TP relief valve. That TP relief valve needs to come off here. It needs to go outside. Can't just dump in the room anymore. We need to have a pan underneath them. They need to be strapped in. Also, all these heat pump water heaters can't be in really small places unless you make adjustments for the ventilation. So these things move warm air in or ambient air in, and they move cold air out. And if they're in a small place and the air gets too cold in there, they will drop their efficiency. And so sometimes these need to be vented to a secondary place. That might take the DIY part out of it for you. If it's going in a garage, no problem, DIY it. But we do have to remember that there's a lot of things that we need to connect that we don't normally on regular water heaters. And then if it's a 240 volt circuit, we don't recommend doing DIY on those. Okay. Just in case when we get down there at the bottom and we're trying to figure out how to pay for all this stuff, this is not going to be inexpensive, which is why it's a good business opportunity, but it's also a good opportunity for the consumer because it's never going to be less expensive than it is now. Electrifying your home, other than solar panels, none of this stuff has gone down in price. And the only reason solar panels have gone down in price is because you're charged by the watt. And so what they've been able to do is take the same amount of square footage on a solar panel and just make it more efficient. So you get more watts out of a specific square foot of panel than we used to. And that's what's made solar costs go down. We don't need as many panels to give more energy. So far, we're not seeing any relief in the HVAC market. And as long as there's a push to get this stuff done, I can't see manufacturers dropping their price too much on any kind of the product that you might want. So that remains to be seen. Could change. So never been a better time with incentives. The federal stuff's coming out next year. We got lots of really great stuff right now. If you're thinking about a heat pump or you're thinking about the best way to get started on your home, the heat pump water heater opportunity right now to change that gas water heater and put a heat pump water heater in is not going to be this good again. When the current set of incentives shift, I would think it would be highly unlikely for them to get better than they are now. We're in the neighborhood of $6,000 plus in incentives on these systems now if you can leverage the tax credit. So statewide incentives for going all electric are making it much easier. There's a lot of little programs throughout. So in the last 2.5 years, since kind of the pandemic problems that we were having getting products, we've seen 35% hikes in our overall wholesale cost to us, which it would be great if we had some sort of a business model where we could just absorb a major increase in price and still deliver our product for what we were charging 2 years ago, but we can't. So we had some customers last year that opted to wait for the tax credit that was coming out this year. And they ended up waiting so long through a couple of price increases that their tax credit ended up being a couple $100 once we figured in the difference in the cost of the system once they waited 6 months. So the waiting for anything to come out down the road could end up costing you more, even though you might get another incentive on it, just FYI. So lots of incentive sources, not just your utility. I'll show you next on the next page where you can go and find out what those are for your area. But there's cities, the counties, communities, there's the aggregators in the state, the ones that are pulling all the power together, the regional energy networks. All of these groups are kind of involved in the different layers of energy, and there might be multiple incentives available for you in specific areas. I know, like if you happen to be a customer in MCE territory and you're getting MCE, Marine Clean Energy, there's an amazing financing program that just came out for 2 years interest-free financing. We have an exclusive on that for the next while, but some programs are midstream. In other words, some of the rebates you see on the rebate page are rebates that go to the contractor, either in reduced cost of the initial appliance or as a cash repayment to the contractor. The contractors are not obligated to give that to you. So different contractors are going to treat that differently. In some areas, we give it back to the customer. In some areas, we don't because of the admin cost on the other end. But ask the contractors about that up front. Programs change really fast. I'm going to show you the best link we have to look at the most accurate information on incentives. Not all funds double dip. So if you have multiple incentives that you're looking for, there's a really great one in PG&E territory called California Energy Smart Homes. And that is coming out of the same pot of money as another incentive program, so they cancel each other out. So if you get this one over here, you can't get this one over here. Some of them do. Tech Clean California is an incentive that pretty much stacks on top of everything. So there are some that will stack and there's others that won't. Just make sure that the contractor that you're dealing with, is privy on that and doesn't leave you scratching your head when they explain it. And just understand, not all contractors are going to provide all incentives. Every time there's an incentive that is brought through by a contractor, it means there's admin burden in the company. There might be another test or some sort of verification in the field that needs to be done that could cost more and offset some of the savings from that. So there are contractors out there that don't want to mess with some of the stuff that's heavily burdensome. So you can't blame them. But smaller companies especially, they just don't have the admin strength to get things done. And it's a long road up a hill with a backpack full of water. So check on that, and it's challenging to stay up to date. This is the site right here called the Switches On. You can go to switcheson.org and you can find incentives through the buttons, or you can put in this URL and it will take you to a place where you can pop in your zip code and it'll tell you all of the incentives that are available in that zip code. Now, some of those are going to be midstream, some of them are going to go to the contractor, some of them your contractor might not be participating in. So you just got to kind of check it out and see what's available, and then have the contractor explain it to you and see what you're really going to qualify for in real life. Okay, Inflation Reduction Act. This is a big one. We hear about this all the time. The federal rebate program launch still to be determined. So there's big rebates coming through on this sometime next year. Now, when these were all announced at about this time last year, there was varying information on when this would all be available. So we had customers that were waiting for these rebates that were literally going to take 1.5 years to get around. And then they would go online and they would say, well, no, this says it'll be out in the mid-2023. This one says fourth quarter 2023. But the real guidance on this is it's going to be probably the beginning of Q2 2024 before those rebates are available. And we don't know what the efficiency, we don't know, there's a lot of unknowns there. So the tax credits, however, are live. And so if we wait for the federal program to be launched and we want a heat pump water heater and we wait for that to be launched and we run out of money for the SGIP program, which is like up to $3,800 for a heat pump water heater right now, that money's probably going to go away before the other ones are launched. So there's going to be a point where we're going to give up a sure thing rebate here for a maybe thing here. It's setting itself up to do it all over again. So don't wait on these things if you don't have to. So you can only use it. So the heat pump tax credit it's just like anybody else's tax. Anytime you've ever gotten a tax credit, you have to owe taxes in excess of that. But that means, like, if you paid the federal government $30,000 in income tax, you got a $15,000 tax refund, you still paid them $15,000. You can get a tax credit. But if you get a $2,000 tax credit and you didn't pay in any income tax, you're not going to get a tax credit. You're not going to get that money. So it's important that you know that. You can only use it to decrease or eliminate tax liability, and not everybody has a tax liability. So that's one that you need to think about when you're looking into this. So it's 30% up to $2,000 on heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. Almost all heat pump water heaters are going to qualify for this, but all heat pumps are not. And we were at a conference last week with a bunch of contractors, and I was on the panel, and I asked, how many contractors are installing heat pumps? How many contractors are talking about tax credits? How many of you knew that there was a limitation to the efficiency? And like a very few hands went up. So there are contractors out there that don't understand that there is efficiency guidelines for these heat pump incentives. So it's really, really important that we make sure that you don't think you're going to get a rebate when you may not. One rebate, one heat pump or heat pump water heater per year. Watch that CEE list. And that's it, man. It's 1:26. So do we have any questions out there that need to be answered? Because we got 4 solid minutes to answer them.
All right, I'm seeing a couple come through. One was asking if we can share details on the MCE 0% program. So I can put a link into our email address, and you can email us for more information on that. That's just coming out shortly. Next question is on here there's a new 120-volt heat pump water heater on the market. Maybe simpler to install that than the 240-volt. So Larry, do you want to talk about a couple of the 120-volt options that are out there, and in which ways they can be simpler than a 240-volt install?
Yeah, so they are simpler than a 240-volt install, and they should cost less to install as well, because we don't have to worry about getting that 30-amp circuit over to it. So a couple reasons why these are really smart. One is we're not pulling another double pole 30-amp circuit off of what could be already full panel or close to full or just no breaker space. The other is literally we can plug the thing in the wall. So it can share a circuit with other appliances in the house. So it theoretically can be done DIY much easier than putting the 230-volt unit in. We do go to houses sometimes where the 230-volt circuit takes an hour to install because there's a sub panel really close, or sometimes we'll use a circuit sharing device where we plug it into the dryer and we'll share the circuit with the dryer. Those can be pretty simple. But if you have a panel, like if your electrical panel is on the front side of the house on that side of the garage and your water heater is way over on this side of the garage, it could be a very expensive wire circuit to get the wire over there. So it's a cost saving thing. Now the downside is these units typically don't have as much backup heat. So all of these water heaters use a compressor to heat the water as the primary heating source. This particular brand has a small secondary heater that can help hold the water when it gets cold in the garage. But like this model right here, which is the one I have, it doesn't have any secondary heater. So it's just this heat pump unit that heats the water. So what you have to do is you have to put a larger tank capacity in to offset for this, for the slower recovery time. So if you think about it, with a 50-gallon water heater, if you take a 10-gallon shower, you've used 20% of that water. And so 20% of the water is being recovered with cold water. And so the unit has to run a little bit longer. These units, this particular brand also comes with this turbo valve on it that just basically lets us run the tank temperature up to 140 and then mix the water temperature down to 120, which also gives us about 25% additional storage capacity. So these can be way easier to install. Just understand they're going to take longer to heat up than a gas water heater. They're going to take longer to heat up than a 220-volt water heater. And you need to put a larger tank size in. And the tank size needs to be dictated by how many bathrooms you have, how many heating loads, how many people you have in your house. Typically, if you have a 50-gallon gas water tank, you need to go with at least a 65-gallon heat pump water heater. So I hope that answered your
All right.
question.
And then I'll also add that it's really important to think about which climate you're in. I mean, PG&E has a very diverse climate array. So if you're in an area where it's freezing fairly often, these may not be the best solution unless it's conditioned space. And I don't see any additional questions, and we're right at about time. So, Larry, I think I'll pass it over to Javier to close this out.
All right.